Here is something nobody has ever said out loud about the empath in your life. They are the first ones to notice when something is wrong with you. They felt it before you said a word, before you changed your tone, before you even admitted it to yourself. They were already there, already asking, already making space for everything you were carrying without being asked. And right now, in this exact moment, nobody is doing that for them. Stay with me. Because what Carl Jung discovered about what happens to an empath when they are left unchecked, when the person who carries everyone else is carrying it all completely alone, will permanently change how you see the most giving person in your life. And by the end of this, you will understand something about empaths that most people only realize when it is already too late. Carl Jung said that the soul has a threshold, not a weakness, not a breaking point, a threshold. The place where a person can no longer give what they have not been given, where they can no longer pour from a vessel that has never once been filled by someone else's hands. And nowhere does that threshold matter more than in the empath who has been checking on everyone around them for so long that they have completely forgotten what it feels like to be checked on themselves. You see, most people assume empaths are fine. They seem fine, they sound fine, they look fine. But Jung's research revealed something far deeper, and frankly far more devastating than anything their performance of fine is designed to show. Here is what nobody tells you about what happens inside an empath when nobody checks on them. And trust me, once you understand this, you will never again mistake their silence for strength. According to Carl Jung, every empath carries within them what he called an invisible emotional economy, a system of giving and receiving that was supposed to flow in both directions. But here is the critical piece most people miss entirely. The empath never asks for their side of the economy to be honored, not because they do not need it, but because somewhere along the way they absorbed a belief so deep it became invisible. The belief that their role is to give and everyone else's role is to receive. Jung called this the martyrdom of the sensitive soul, the unconscious sacrifice of the empath's own needs on the altar of everyone else's comfort. And it does not look like suffering. That is exactly what makes it so dangerous. It looks like strength, it looks like selflessness, it looks like someone who has it together while everyone else is falling apart. But behind that, behind every check-in they offer and every space they hold and every time they show up for someone who never once asked if they were okay, something is quietly collapsing. But here is where it gets dangerous for empaths specifically. And this is where Jung's work becomes absolutely essential. Carl Jung discovered that empaths operate with what he called a chronic suppression of the self-preservation instinct. Most people, when they are running low, feel it clearly. They get irritable, they withdraw, they say I need a break. They communicate their limits in ways that are impossible to ignore. But the empath does not work that way. Their nervous system has been so thoroughly trained to prioritize everyone else's emotional state that their own warning signals get rerouted. Instead of feeling low and asking for help, they feel low and try harder. Instead of withdrawing to refill, they push forward and give more. Instead of saying, I need someone to check on me, they go check on someone else. Jung called this the inversion of the self-care instinct, and he said it is one of the most quietly devastating patterns a psychologically sensitive person can be trapped inside. Because the very moment the empath needs the most, the moment they are closest to their threshold, is the exact moment they become the most invisible. Not because no one cares, because their way of being in pain looks exactly like their way of being okay. Listen carefully to what happens next, because this is where everything shifts. According to Carl Jung's theory of psychic depletion, when an empath reaches the threshold, when the invisible emotional economy has been running on deficit for too long without anyone depositing back into it, something devastating occurs. It is not a breakdown. It is not a dramatic collapse that announces itself and demands attention. It is a withdrawal. Quiet, gradual, almost imperceptible to everyone around them. The texts come a little slower. The check-ins from their side become a little less frequent. The warmth is still there, but something behind it, something that used to feel endless, has gone slightly dim. And most people around them never notice, because the empath, even in the middle of their own depletion, is still performing enough of themselves to keep everyone comfortable. Jung called this the disappearance behind the giving, the slow erasure of the self that happens when a person has been the emotional anchor for everyone around them for so long that there is almost nothing left of their own interior world. They are still there, but they are disappearing, and nobody is checking. But here is the part that will absolutely change your life, because Jung did not just identify this wound. He discovered exactly what it costs the empath when it goes unaddressed. And it is not what most people think. Most people assume the damage is emotional exhaustion. And yes, the exhaustion is real, and it is bone deep, and it is the kind that no amount of sleep fully resolves. But Jung identified something beneath the exhaustion that is far more serious. He called it the erosion of the will to receive. Here is what that means. When an empath goes long enough without being checked on, when they spend month after month and year after year giving without anyone ever genuinely turning toward them and asking how they actually are, something changes in their psyche. They stop expecting it. Not consciously, not as a decision, but quietly, structurally, at the level of how their soul organizes its relationship to other people. They stop believing that the kind of care they give to others is something they are allowed to receive. They begin to experience genuine connection when someone does check on them, when someone does ask how they really are, as something foreign. Something that makes them uncomfortable rather than relieved. Jung called this the calcification of the giving self. The point at which the empath has been in the role of giver for so long that receiving has become psychologically disorienting. And that is when the real damage is done, not when they hit empty, when they forget they were ever supposed to be filled. Here is what nobody tells you about the empath who seems completely fine, the one who always shows up, who always has the right words, who always knows what you need before you need it. That person has a version of today that they have not shown anyone. There is a moment they had this morning, quiet, private, entirely theirs, where something in them wondered whether any of the people they pour themselves into would even notice if they went silent. Not as self-pity, as a genuine question that has been sitting unanswered for longer than they would ever say out loud. Jung said that this question, this specific quiet wondering, is the soul's way of measuring its own worth in the economy it has been operating inside. And when the answer keeps coming back as probably not, something in the empath begins to seal itself off, not to punish anyone, to survive. But here is the final piece. And it is the most important thing Carl Jung ever discovered about the empath who has been carrying everything alone. He said that the empath does not need to be rescued. They do not need grand gestures. They do not need someone to finally notice all the ways they have been invisible. They do not need the people around them to suddenly become something they were never capable of being. What they need is something far simpler and far more powerful. Jung called it the experience of being witnessed. One genuine moment, one real question asked without agenda, one person who turns toward them, not to receive, not to need, not to take, but simply to see, to ask how they actually are, and to stay long enough to actually hear the answer. Jung discovered that for the depleted empath, a single authentic experience of being witnessed does not just restore their energy. It restores their belief that they are worth witnessing. And that belief, once restored, changes everything. It changes how they receive care, how they ask for what they need, how they set the limits that protect them without guilt, how they show up for others from a place of genuine fullness rather than chronic depletion. It changes who they are in every relationship from that moment forward, not because one moment can undo years of invisible exhaustion, but because one moment of being genuinely seen reminds the empath of something they had almost completely forgotten. That they are not just the person who checks on everyone else. They are someone worth checking on. The empath in your life right now is not fine. They are performing fine. There is a difference. And Jung spent his entire career trying to get the world to understand that difference before it was too late. Before the person who held everything together quietly disappeared behind their own giving. Before the one who never missed a check-in became the one nobody ever checked on. Before the soul that was built to feel everything was finally exhausted into feeling nothing. Check on your empath. Not with a text. Not with a quick "how are you" that expects the answer "fine." With presence. With real time. With the willingness to sit in whatever they have been quietly carrying and not try to fix it or move through it or redirect it towards something more comfortable. Just sit with it, the way they have been sitting with yours. If this reached something in you that you have been carrying quietly, you are not alone in it, even if it has felt that way for a very long time. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that the strongest person they know is also the one who most needs to be asked how they really are. And subscribe. Because what is coming next is for the empath who has been waiting for someone to finally see what they have been holding in silence.